Miller and Urey left their experiment running for several weeks, and at the end, their ocean contained a brown goo. The results surprised everyone. In that goo were some of the fundamental building blocks of life, including amino acids. This experiment inspired chemists since to look into this area in more detail, and we're beginning to gain an understanding of how life might have arisen in the early Earth, to gain clues about how life actually formed, and even whether there might be life elsewhere. At the University of Leeds works Dr. Terry Key, an astrochemist.
If we consider life as being biology, before that there must be something called chemistry. We don't know the transition that occurred on this planet from chemistry to biology, and that's ultimately where we're looking to focus our efforts.
Terry and his team are investigating how life originated here on Earth, how early chemicals might have formed, and they're particularly interested in phosphorus.
Phosphorus is a fundamental chemical in DNA, RNA. It goes to make up the cell membranes. It also is a key element in providing the molecules for energy that our body uses. So take phosphorus out of life and there wouldn't be any life as we understand it. This is a benchtop mass spectrometer here, and we use this to measure gas evolution from various experiments.
The problem Terry is wrestling with is the fact that phosphorus, in the form we find it on Earth, phosphate, isn't very soluble in water and would have had trouble reacting to form complex molecules. But he might have found the answer.
Certainly within a period of 500 million years from the formation of the Earth, we could expect that our Earth would be peppered by meteorites, cometary fragments in something called the late heavy bombardment. This is an iron meteorite. Particular chemicals that we're interested in here are the phosphorus chemicals, and they're mixtures of iron, nickel and phosphorus called schreibosite. There's a little picture of it there. This thing, that is iron, nickel phosphide and schreibosite.
Terry and his team are working on creating a simulated space environment to work out how meteorites might have delivered the right kind of phosphorus to kickstart life on Earth.
Some of the chemistry that we're looking at with phosphorus starts from meteorites, and meteorites have inclusions within them of this material called schreibosite. And what we can do is we can treat this with water, heat it, and we get out a number of phosphorus compounds, one of which we're quite interested in, which is this fellow here. And this guy is called phosphonic acid. We heat it to round about 130 degrees, it loses water, and it reacts to form a rather unusual phosphorus species called pyrophosphite. What we're looking at is just how this rather reactive form of phosphorus could have been used as an agent to transfer phosphorus in a prebiotic context.
Terry's team have discovered that these compounds could well have provided phosphorus in a form that could have been incorporated into organic molecules, the first precursors to life.
The question of where we came from, I think, is really quite an important one, because it will tell us a little bit about how life in general could have emerged, and how it may emerge in the future, how it may have emerged in the past, how it may emerge again. It may give us an indication as to how the whole process of evolution of life may change, and what the role of life is in the universe. Whereas my specific problems are sort of kind of focused on how did one go from chemistry to biology, the wider payoff might be, what do we learn about ourselves as a result of it?
When I talk to people about exciting chemistry, I think most of them assume that it's all going to be about bubbling mixtures and things that go pop. But the reality is that many of the most exciting materials around us actually look pretty mundane. As I paint, you might imagine that the white pigment in the paint, titanium dioxide, would be one of the most boring materials on the planet. But you'd be wrong. Titanium dioxide is actually one of the whitest materials in the universe and one of the most interesting materials of the moment. It's central to unlikely applications like self-cleaning glass, like water purification, and perhaps most importantly, answering our energy needs. At University College London, the amazing properties of titanium dioxide have inspired chemists to look into using it to harness the power of the sun to make energy.
About 5% of the sun's energy hitting the Earth's surface is UV light. And titanium can absorb this light and it can give this energy to an electron, which then becomes excited and goes into an excited state. And it's the ability, which is quite unique to titanium, to keep this electron separated from the positive charge that it left behind for a long time. These are the reactive species which generate all the really interesting chemistry and physics which is involved with titanium.
The simplicity of using titanium dioxide in harnessing the power of sunlight is opening the door to a new generation of solar cells.
Well, we've already seen them commercially integrated into backpacks and bags. Next we could be sort of wearing solar cells, generating electricity as we walk around in the sunshine every day. So we're going to put together a very, very rough dye-sensitized solar cell here.
A solar cell made with titanium dioxide is so simple to make, it can be done on just a lab bench. All it takes is a conducting liquid placed onto a glass slide that's covered in titanium dioxide.
We're going to take our iodine electrolyte and just drop it onto the surface. And then it's as simple as sandwiching these two together. And there you have it, a dye-sensitized solar cell. And that's really how easy it is to make. We've connected one up over here. You'll see that we're about 142 millivolts here, just from the ambient light. If I then turn on a light source, you can see the voltage is going to shoot up. And this is because we're adding light energy into our system, and then it's this voltage that if we connect a circuit up to, will drive the current round, and we can get work out of our solar cell. So the limitations we're having commercializing dye-sensitized solar cells really result from the fact that you're using this liquid iodine electrolyte. So there's been a lot of problems in actually sealing up the dye cells so they can last the lifetime of a solar cell, which is typically about 20 years.
Matthew's colleague, Dr. Jeff Hyatt, is using titanium dioxide to produce hydrogen gas, which has obvious advantages over the solar cells.
What if you want to switch on your lights when it's dark, i.e. when the solar energy isn't present? How can you store that energy? So the advantage of not directly producing electricity is you have it as a chemical store. Of course, one of the questions is how do you get your hydrogen? The current method of making hydrogen is actually by burning petrochemicals or processing petrochemicals, so of course it's not really a solution. But by splitting water using solar energy, it's another way of getting hydrogen.
Titanium dioxide is central to this water splitting process.
So what's happening here is that the CO2 is being irradiated, it's absorbing that light, it's promoting electrons, so it's exciting electrons in the material, and the bubbles coming off the surface there are hydrogen gas. So in scale up we'll be collecting that gas, it's collecting in the headspace here, and you could take that off and use it as a fuel source. Titanium dioxide does have many advantages. It's a great material to start the research on. Its principal disadvantage, its sort of ultimate downfall, is it only absorbs the ultraviolet part of the solar spectrum, which only makes about 10% of the solar spectrum. So that's sort of the maximum, the upper limit on the efficiency, and that's quite a crippling upper limit if that's the best you can do. So what we'd like to do is develop new materials that have many of the advantages of titanium, but can start to use more of the solar spectrum, so it can start to absorb in the visible. Most of the energy is available in the visible, so plan to use visible light. And we'd like to develop new materials that can take advantage of that as well.
Mimicking nature is, ironically, one of the hardest things to do. But one man is attempting this.
This is a microscope. We can take photographs of the crystals for recording.
Professor James Barber at Imperial College London is running a project called the Artificial Leaf.
When you look at the amount of energy that we require now and also in the future, and then you look at what is available to us, then there is no energy source other than fossil fuels that can supply the amounts of energy that we need. And if you look at alternatives to fossil fuels, hydroelectric for example, nuclear or wind, none of them would supply anywhere near the amount of energy that we would require globally, that is. On the other hand, 1 hour of sunlight is equal to all the energy that we currently consume on the planet in 1 year.
And nature has managed to harness this energy.
This colossal amount of solar energy available to us, that is to the planet, has been captured and turned into chemical bonds through the process of photosynthesis over billions of years.
Inside the plant leaf is an enzyme called photosystem II. It's this enzyme that actually splits water in the same way as titanium dioxide, but it does it efficiently using visible light. As Professor Barber's work developed, it became clear that they had to understand how photosystem II actually works.
I set aside all other work that I was doing to focus on obtaining the structure of photosystem II. These are actually some mutants you can see there, and these are being cultivated on agar, ready for inoculation.
Professor Barber succeeded in obtaining crystals of the enzyme, not easy for such a complex protein.
You might think, oh, that's simple, because you can easily get a crystal of copper sulfate or of sodium chloride or something. But this is a very complicated, complex protein with many different subunits. It's got nearly 20 different subunits.
With the crystals in hand, using X-ray crystallography, he slowly mapped the huge structure of photosystem II, and his efforts paid off.
At the heart of this enzyme, which is actually composed of many different proteins, is the catalytic center where the water splitting reaction occurs, where light energy is used to split water into oxygen and electrons and protons. And this catalytic center is composed of 4 manganese ions and a calcium ion.
This manganese cluster self-assembles even when the leaf is damaged, and so maybe answers the question to finding a long-lasting hydrogen-producing cell.
There's been a lot of interest in trying to mimic it, and it's an obvious thing you want to do, because taking hydrogen out of water using sunlight is one of the great challenges for mankind.
Once the hydrogen has been produced, the challenge is to store it and convert it into electricity on demand. It's a challenge that could provide an answer to our energy problems.
This is really the only option that we have, which is realistic, and we know can be done, just a matter of effort. If the leaf can do it, we can do it, but we have to do it better.
This is an incredibly exciting time to be in chemistry, and in this program we've barely scratched the surface of the exciting developments that are taking place at the moment. Chemistry is providing answers to some of the fundamental questions of our time, and also producing new materials and devices that are going to transform our lives. In the coming decades, I think we can expect to see mobile phones with graphene chips, nanomedicines in our hospitals, perhaps a transport fleet based on hydrogen produced by sunlight. Who knows? We might even answer the question of whether there is life elsewhere in the universe. There are still plenty of challenges to be faced and things to be found out. But with our new techniques and understanding of the way molecules work, it's clear we're entering a new era in chemistry.